Hi, I'm Selena, and welcome to my book talk / gush about my childhood favorite series, Percy Jackson and the Olympians. So I first read this series at the age of 10. It was one of my friend's one of her favorite books, and she recommended me the entire series, and she lent me them, and so I read them, and I fell in love. But I haven't really reread them since the age of 10 because there was always more Riordan content coming out, like Kane Chronicles or The Heroes of Olympus, and so I haven't ever reread them and seen if they held up. And so now I'm 21. It's been 11 years. I was 20 when I reread the series. I just turned 21. It's been 10 years or something since the last time I read these books, and I recently reread them, and let me just tell you, they held up. I gave every single one of these books 5 stars, and I'm gonna talk about them. Since so much of my love is built on the nostalgia of my childhood, I don't think I'll be able to review these books critically, so I'm just going to be doing a book talk like the one I did for the Lunar Chronicles, where I went into spoilery detail with each book, talked about what I liked, what I didn't like. We are going to get a little bit critical with some of these books with the flaws that I see in them, but, you know, most of it's going to be a gush because I gave all these books 5 stars and I love them. Without further ado, let's get to it. Starting with The Lightning Thief. So I have some of the most nostalgic memories associated with The Lightning Thief. This is the one that I would reread parts from the most. It was the one that I read the most when I would start my rereads of the series, and I'm sure at times I didn't finish them. It was the one that I would read aloud the most. One of my pastimes was to read the dialogue aloud. For a long time, this was the most beat up of all my Percy Jackson books, and it is still the only one of my old Percy Jackson books that is held together by tape. I loved this book even as an adult. I think that the pacing of Rick Riordan's books is absolutely perfect. It's flawless. That's just my opinion, but let me convince you a little bit, because we start off this book with a really, not knowing a lot. It's very mysterious. You're not really sure what's going on. You kind of have to just be on the ride with Percy, and you're seeing things that are going down that are kind of weird. But if you don't know the premise of the book, which I didn't when I was 10, all of this mysterious stuff reads very, genuinely mysterious and, what is going on? And this mysterious beginning to the book culminates in the fight with the Minotaur, and then we are in Camp Half-Blood, and we're at Camp Half-Blood for a little bit, and we get used to Camp Half-Blood, and then we're told, oh, we gotta leave, Percy's gotta go on this quest. And the quest itself, I've heard people say the quest is episodic, they meet a monster, they get to, another roadblock, and they get past it, and then they meet another one, and they get past it, and it's very episodic. And I will agree that it can be episodic, especially for an older person. I didn't notice that as a kid. I just saw it as fun action. So I think that yes, it's episodic, or yes, it's formulaic. But I think it's just perfectly executed formula. It's just so well balanced to me with downtime and action and travel time and action and just I love it. Furthermore, I don't think the quest goes on too long. I think they get where they need to go in a timely amount of time for, a children's book. Likewise, I just thought the plot and pacing and the humor especially was just right on for a middle grade novel. Things wrapped up a little bit shorter. Each scene was shorter than I remembered from when I was a kid, but when I was a kid, scenes, I had a shorter attention span, we all did, and so, those scenes probably seemed a lot longer then. And I still think that for the audience that this is, the pacing of the scenes also works really well. Percy is such a delightful character to be in the head of. I think all the characters are great, but Percy especially, his voice is just, so good. I love Percy. He's such a good character. I love him. And then even all the side characters, Annabeth, Luke, Grover, Mr. D, Chiron, Sally Jackson, everyone just is so good. I just love how everyone feels like they're not half-baked. Even when we meet gods who act as much more like roadblocks, or antagonists a little bit, or just people that, I don't know, that are involved in some way, even though they are not given that much character, I still feel like I know them, or I know something about every person in this book. that helps me get a bigger idea of who they are as a whole person. The development of Percy and Annabeth's friendship is god tier. It is so cool. It is so cute. My favorite scenes used to be the ones where they would just be sitting in the trains or cars or vans or whatever they would be in, going across the country and talking. Like, talking to each other, getting to know each other. Annabeth telling Percy about her dad, or like them talking about their friendship and like Athena and Poseidon. Like, all that is so good to me. And it's just because you really do see their friendship form gradually and you see how their friendship works. This is just a rock solid foundation for these two friends whose relationship plays such a huge role in the rest of the books. I also think that the Grover reveal is really interesting, how Annabeth is tied to Thalia and the tree, and Grover is tied to them, and Luke is tied to them, and I really like the backstory that we're working with that Percy wasn't here for. And I like how some of these characters have a history that is quite painful. I think it brings an extra layer of depth to this story and these characters. So before we talk about the ending, I wanted to bring up a theory that I have about the Percy Jackson books. I have a feeling that every single book in the series is about a certain Greek hero. Like, we are inspired by one Greek hero for all the books. And the one for The Lightning Thief is Perseus, in my opinion. I totally think that this book is the closest to Perseus. Mostly, this is the one that works the least, I think, but I think because we are introduced to Percy, and his name is Perseus, and Sally Jackson has these hopes for him, and that's why she named him Perseus. She wanted him to have a happy ending. Like, it just makes sense to me. And then to have Medusa be one of the defining monsters that they fight, it makes sense for this to be the Perseus book. But we will continue as we go with the other books, and we'll talk about who I think the heroes are that the other books are playing with. The ending of The Lightning Thief is really good. I love the ending. I've always loved the ending. I've always thought it was so explosive and fun, and also really kind of heartbreaking. The Luke thing I did not predict as a kid, really, and I mean, I can see why it would be obvious for adults, but I think if you're a kid, the whole ending, how it's like not Hades and it was Ares the whole time, and like it was Luke acting with Kronos, like all that is foreshadowed, but it's not something that I think most kids would put together. At least I didn't. Maybe most kids are smarter than me. But either way, I think The Lightning Thief is such a fun ride, and I had such a good time with it. Moving on to the Sea of Monsters, I just want to say, in the beginning of this book, we do use the R slur twice. A bully says to Percy, Percy about his friend that he calls him the R word, and Percy's like, no, he's not the R word. And I mean, that's not a good scene to have included. It's kind of an older book, so knowledge of that being a slur was probably less prevalent, but that's not an excuse, even though that sounded like an excuse. Like, there's no excusing it being in the book. That just might explain why it's in the book, but just be careful, like, know that that's in there, and I am criticizing that now. I don't like that was in there. So the Sea of Monsters is the fandom least favorite, and I don't know why. I mean, I know why, so we're gonna talk about the criticisms, and we're gonna talk about why I don't agree, really. So the first criticism that this book usually gets is about the plot conveniences. And yes, this whole series has quite a few plot conveniences. People will come in and save Percy pretty regularly when, it's not looking very good for Percy. And yeah, that's a problem. I think that I would have noticed it less as a middle schooler, but yeah, I can see that definitely can bother people. It didn't really bother me, even though I noticed them this time around. Same thing with the quests being formulaic. I do agree that if this is a formula, it's a really good formula in my opinion, but I can see where people get the formulaic criticisms, and I also see the criticism that this is more of a filler book. I see a lot of people saying that this book only matters in the context of the Titan's Curse, and I agree somewhat, and I also think that that's okay. To me, that feels okay, because I think I was just really willing as a kid to let this book be whatever it was. Like, I didn't need to pick up with the Kronos plotline right away. I didn't need him to age more than he aged. I was okay with these filler plots, and I just had such a fun time with the book that I didn't really care that maybe it wasn't progressing the big overall plot. I had no idea where it was going to go, and so I can see the criticism. It just never bothered me. This book, to me, does, being a sequel to The Lightning Thief, extraordinarily well. We aren't going to be doing the cross road trip thing again. We're doing the sea trip thing now, and I love it. It's very close to the Odyssey. It gives me Odyssey vibes. I love it, love it, love it. And I do think we play with the idea of Odysseus a lot in this, with the Cyclops and Circe and just the nobody thing. I think that Odysseus is the hero we play with in this. We also get some new characters. Tyson, like the questing crew is not Percy, Annabeth, and Grover. It's instead we're going to save Grover, and Tyson is on the questing crew with Annabeth and Percy, and Clarice plays a bigger role. It's honestly, there's a line in the Sea of Monsters where Percy Jackson says he comes back to Camp Half-Blood and everything is different. And it feels like someone has gone into your room and things aren't quite right. It smells like lemon polish or something. And he was talking about how he got that feeling going back into Camp Half-Blood. And I honestly think that people get that feeling when they go back into this book. Camp Half-Blood is different. The questing crew is different. Percy is not alone. When we start the book, he's with Tyson. This book is just a very different book from The Lightning Thief, and I personally think it had to be, but I do think that I can see why it turned some people off, and I do think it's that lemon polish feel that this book has that really doesn't work for some people and really works for some. And while there is an air of unease and things not being quite right, I do think the plot is overall pretty comical, like Grover, like being in a wedding dress, like the Cyclops wanting to marry him, like it's and he not knowing he's a satyr, which is like the thing he likes to eat. It's all very like supposed to be funny, but this is kind of the last time we see just a overly comical book. I can see people being ready to move on to that like darker tone the Titan's Curse introduces, but I personally really like the light and fluffy tone of Sea of Monsters. We do see a Confederate ship in this, which is a choice, and I don't love the fake out death that happened with Tyson, but you know, perfect books don't exist. But overall, this is just a really fun book, and I think the ending is really fun. And then the Thalia thing throws you for a complete loop, or at least it did me with the first time. I was not expecting that. I think that it suddenly makes everything that seemed like not good, made it be clear, and I really liked that. I really like the Sea of Monsters. Also, I am sorry if you hear my dog barking. She's very excited. She thinks she's going somewhere, but she's not going anywhere. I'm just moving out. So the Titan's Curse was always my favorite as a kid, and it still is, and I can tell you the reasons why. This book definitely has a darker and more mature tone with, like, we have an actual, like, kidnapping, like, the stakes are a lot higher, things are immediately a lot darker, and we do have, like, more deaths in this book than we've ever seen from a main cast in this book, the series ever. But we also have a great balance where we have a lot of the funnest scenes of the whole series happen in this book, like the damn snack bar and do you always kill people when they blow their nose. There's also so many characters in this book that we never see this much of again. Zoe, Bianca, Thalia, they're on center stage in this book, and I love it because we never get to see them like this ever again. I also think the character work is just on point with this book. I think that Percy's trying to help people and kind of messing up the whole time is really character building, but it also, you know, fits into his like fatal flaw and just the things we find out about him and being the hero of the prophecy and everything. Like, it just really works. And then you have like Thalia's struggle with power and maybe her being the hero of the prophecy, and like you have Zoe, like you see her being very hurt and betrayed, and by the end of the book you understand why this is, and it fits into the plot. She has to make her final stand despite to someone who has betrayed her, or she is betraying. It's kind of, there's a big theme of betrayal with her. And I just love how the character arcs just come really full circle with this book, and every character arc is also involved with the plot. Like Annabeth's whole thing with her family, she has a very complicated relationship with her family. Her dad is helpful with the plot in this book, and they seem to kind of get a little bit better. And so I just think Rick Riordan is a master at lining his character development up with his plots in this book, and I love it. But the real reason that I love this book so much is honestly for the questing crew. This questing crew, it does not fit at all. Percy and Zoe do not get along. Zoe does not like him at all. She doesn't trust him. And she doesn't really like Thalia. She and Thalia have history that they don't really mesh well. And then Thalia and Percy are at each other's throats all the time. Bianca and Percy have a weird relationship because Percy doesn't really appreciate how she left her brother and would join the Huntresses, but then Bianca knows that about Percy, that Percy doesn't like that about her, and so they kind of have a little bit of tension for a little bit. And I just think that this questing crew was as much as they were all meant to be the questing crew, it's like they didn't fit right at first. That dog just barked. They didn't fit right, and then they pick and they fight and they basically just bully each other all the way to California until they're finally friends, and I love it. I love that you see their relationship really develop out of the hardships, and they slowly learn to trust each other, and they slowly the insults turn into like friendly picking, and I think it works really well. I think this plot, you could say it's episodic, and you could say like this is honestly the last time we really return to a road trippy type plot in this series. But I do think that, some people might feel like it's episodic or follows a similar thread as the last two, but I do think that this plot has a lot of meat to it. It's carrying a lot of the groundwork for book 4 in its back, like with Pan and Grover's quest and Clarice's quest, and meeting Rachel Elizabeth Dare, what will eventually happen with Luke, what will eventually happen between Percy and Annabeth, the stuff with Nico, like all of it is set up in this book, and I think that the Titan's Curse does it pretty seamlessly, because you only realize what the Titan's Curse was doing for the Battle of the Labyrinth after you read the series. The foreshadowing is absolutely crazy in this. Like, it is so good. Like, I don't fully remember everything about it, but it was just so intentionally placed, and I noticed so much of it this time. Thematically, I think this book is also pretty beautiful, maybe more heavy on themes than the rest of the series, and I think it honestly focuses on the theme of the betrayal of women in the lives of heroes, because we'll hear about a lot of men heroes, and while we, follow a diverse by gender, not really, it's mostly white people, we do follow a cast of girls and boys, and so we know that girls can be heroes too in this world, but a lot of the big heroes were men, and so I think that Rick Riordan has included little things here and there where he'll include quips about that, like with Cersei, but this book is the first time we really see a woman wiped from a hero's story, even though she helped him commit his heroic deeds. And then to have her turn to Artemis, and to have this be a place where girls can go to escape, how I interpret it, escape a more patriarchal society. I know that Rick Riordan has it in there as these girls, they swear off romance, but I think that in doing that, like, the original purpose of the Huntresses of Artemis was so that girls could remain like maidens if they wish, and they wouldn't have to enter into a relationship with the man in order to, have their independence. And it was supposed to be, to me, I've always interpreted the Huntresses in hunters in Percy Jackson and also in Greek mythology as a place where it wasn't always perfect, but it was meant to at least sort like escape a sort of patriarchy. And I really think that Rick Riordan plays with that a lot. I do think it could have been done better, and I wish it had been done a little bit more, like with less emphasis on like you can't like boys, and more just like more emphasis on how it gets harder for girls as they get older. But I still think it's beautifully done for a middle grade, and I love this book so much. And then we have the Battle of the Labyrinth, and Titan's Curse is a really hard act to follow, and so, I mean, I was never going to like this book as much as I was going to like the Titan's Curse. But I still really like this book, and I do love Percy's character in this book. I think Percy his development really takes off when he becomes not just like a preteen with a lot of like problems and like confusion and just doesn't know what he's doing. He's very comfortable in his own skin in this book, as much as he is worried, and he is trying to help his friends. He is also very confident and much more confident himself. People trust him more to take the best interests of the camp at heart, and I really enjoy seeing that out of Percy. I feel like the character arcs that are really happening in this book are more Annabeth, Grover, Tyson. Everyone is being challenged in this book to really just go to the limits of where their character can go. Even Rachel and Nico, this is happening. And I think that is the genius of the Battle of the Labyrinth, is because it in character at least, it allows Percy to have a stable moment and allow it to form his character as who he's going to be as a teenager. But it also pushes the other characters to the absolute limit. So this whole series has a continuous thread of character growth in all the characters, not just Percy. This book honestly just feels also a bit different. It feels more mature. It has a different sort of setting like the Sea of Monsters did. It has the Labyrinth as a setting, which is one that literally plays with the minds of these teenagers, and I feel like it could have a theme of like coming of age, being really confused, being in a time where you're really just trying to get by and trying to figure out where you are supposed to go in life when you have so many choices, you don't know which to make, and how life will throw things at you that seem like they are coming to challenge you. The Labyrinth actually does challenge them, and it throws things at them that they are not prepared to deal with. And then along with that, you also have the like teenage relationship stuff starting. Percy and Annabeth's relationship is changing. Things are just very not very solid for Percy. It's kind of like he's stumbling around in the labyrinth in the dark in a lot more ways than just in the physical labyrinth. He's also navigating a lot of other stuff, and I just think that this book does it really beautifully. And then as far as plot goes, I mean, pacing is an old hat for Riordan at this point. I said that in my review. I think that the plot in this book is, like the labyrinth itself, sprawling. There's a lot that Rick Riordan has to pull off and wrap up here, and he does it. He has the Daedalus plotline, and he has the Theseus plotline, which, by the way, this book is Theseus's book. Last book, I don't think I said it, but the Titan's Curses book is obviously Hercules to me, and we really question whether Hercules was a real hero in this book, which I really liked. It was my favorite hero exploration yet. And I think we do something similar with Theseus, because we get to see a darker side of both Theseus and Daedalus. I think they're the heroes that we look at here. And so we have the Daedalus plotline we have to wrap up. We have the Luke plotline. We just have a lot of different plotlines and things to explore with this book. We have the Nico plotline, we have the Pan plotline. There's just so much that the Battle of Labyrinth gets done. And I also think this book has some of the best endings in the series. And I say endings because it does end several times, or at least because it has to wrap up several different threads. We have the Luke thread ending with the Luke allowing Kronos to host in his body. And so we finally see Kronos rise, and the stakes get a whole lot higher. But the Luke plot, where we're wondering, what is this plan? What is Luke planning? We now see it, and it comes to fruition. And so that's one ending. And then they escape that, and then they walk right into the Pan ending. Then we have the Pan ending, and then we go to the camp ending and the labyrinth ending. And that is when we have to fight the army that comes out of the labyrinth, and we have to get rid of the labyrinth. And so we have the Daedalus ending, and then we have like several different just resolutions, which finally cultivate in Nico coming to Percy's birthday party, which even before that, like Poseidon comes to his birthday party, and that was really interesting. And Nico comes, and it's just, I really loved that ending because it was a lot more quiet than I'm used to, and it felt a lot less like cheesy, and it gets you really excited for The Last Olympian, because you're like, what is this cliffhanger? What is this plan? I love this book. So yes, while the Titan's Curse is still my favorite of all time, and the Battle of the Labyrinth had to follow that, so I don't love it as much, I still love this book, and I think that it's one of the most rewarding books of the series, because I think we really see a lot of plots just come to a head in this book, and we are now ready for the final battle. And so we have the final battle. The Last Olympian is a great conclusion. I love it. So this book starts off with a bang, and we have a death pretty immediately, and that is painful, but then you find out the reason why that death happened later, and that is even more painful. We finally find out what the Great Prophecy is, and I do think it can feel a little bit underwhelming. It felt a little bit underwhelming to me this time, but I think as a kid I was not underwhelmed at all. I loved learning this. I think that this is really good information that we have now gotten. We've just now gotten the information that we've been waiting for the whole series. And I think for one reason why this wasn't quite as underwhelming to me was because I read it before Harry Potter. A lot of people read Percy Jackson after Harry Potter, and that I can see really just being like, really? Like, that's what Harry Potter did. But for me, I did it the other way around, so it wasn't as bad. We also find out that Clarice is not going to fight due to disrespect. This is major Iliad vibes. This is major Achilles vibes, which brings me into the fact that this whole book is talking about Achilles. Because then Percy goes and he takes on the Achilles curse. I love how we kind of have to track down what Luke did. We get answers about how Luke prepared his body. We had to look into Luke's his backstory, and we understand him a little bit more. It really reminded me of the 6th Harry Potter book in that way. And then Percy is finally ready to take on the Achilles curse, and he does, and it really just, I think it's a plot point that brings Percy to a different level as a character, and usually I don't love invincible characters, but I think it really works with Percy. I know the battles can feel a bit formulaic because we have a really big battle, someone saves them, but I just really like them. I love that Thalia came. I love that the centaurs came. I really liked the battles. Annabeth taking the knife for Percy was heartbreaking, but also we never really find out why Ethan Nakamura even knew where Percy's spot would be, or why Annabeth felt she needed to do that. I think it's an intuitive thing, but also what? One of my favorite scenes is always when Prometheus comes and offers that they can give up hope, because Prometheus is such a different sort of Titan. He's clearly not like evil, but he's the first person on Cronus's side who we've been able to see as more morally gray, and who seems to switch sides more, and you just can't really figure out his motivations. He's not like just an evil Titan, but he's hard to figure out why he's supporting these Titans. There was one scene in The Last Olympian that really stuck out to me during all these battles. After he's gotten the jar, when Percy goes through so much in this book. He bathes in the river Styx. He goes through battle after battle. The girl he likes gets stabbed by saving him, and then he finds his parents asleep, because Morpheus put the whole city to sleep, in a car. And this car is just like they had been driving to see Percy, and they're just asleep there, and he freaks out because he realizes that they're in the line of fire, and this is a breaking moment for Percy. And then the next second, the jar of where hope, like, that tempts Percy to get rid of hope, appears in the back seat. And then Rachel's helicopter comes, and she almost dies, and he almost loses so many people close to him. And I just really love that we see Percy just sort of break down a bit. For a lot of the last books, Percy has seemed pretty untouchable or unflappable or confident, and he's also invincible, but he isn't really. He's really struggling in this moment, and I really liked that we got a very human moment from him. Clarice and the Draken and Selena, this is an Achilles and Patroclus thing. Like, I don't know what else to say. I can't, like, it's so blatantly obvious to me now that I know the Iliad, but I didn't as a kid. Oh my gosh. It is just, the imagery is the exact same. Yep. And because they are Achilles and Patroclus, that means they're also very queer-coded. I think that the Achilles arc was done really well. I really like it. I think it's the most direct interacting with Achilles' memory that we've ever seen, or a hero's memory that we've ever seen, and I really like it. Ending is really intense. The Luke scene gets me. I was so ready to not humanize Luke and not give Luke anything, and then he was like, give me the knife, and he realized he didn't want to hurt Annabeth, and I was like, okay, I know you're a creep, but also I did cry a little bit when he stabbed himself. Like, I did. I can't help myself. Percy is offered godhood, and it turns it down. I forgot about that. Rachel becoming the Oracle, I knew was going to happen, but I think that was just so beautifully done throughout The Last Olympian. And even before that, I think that was just a great arc for her to have. I loved it. And I love how it's connected to Hades and Nico as well. I think that how interconnected these characters are is really great. Percabeth ending is as cute as ever. And the Great Prophecy ending is meh. I don't love it. I think it's just sort of my least favorite because it allowed Heroes of Olympus to happen. But I really love this series, and that was my thoughts on it. Thank you for watching this book talk. Tell me what your favorite book in the series is. Mine's The Titan's Curse. And tell me what the best book in the series is and why it is The Titan's Curse. And I will see you next time. Bye.